The story of blood is older than any scripture, older than any priesthood, older even than the idea of gods as we understand them today. Blood is the first symbol humanity ever encountered. The red thread that revealed life, identity, and the mystery of existence. When the earliest humans looked at their own wounds and saw the crimson flow, they understood instinctively that something essential was being revealed. Blood became the first metaphor for truth, the first language of the sacred, the first sign that the human being was more than flesh. Across the ancient world, blood was never primarily about violence. It was about meaning. It was the visible sign of the invisible. It represented the essence that cannot be faked, the inner fire that animates the body and binds the individual to the cosmos. Civilizations separated by oceans and millennia converged on the same intuition. Blood is the carrier of life, memory, and identity. It is the symbol of the bond between the human and the divine. In Egypt, the red of blood was associated with renewal, resurrection, and cosmic order. The myth of Osiris, dismembered and restored, was not a tale of gore, but a drama of regeneration. The Egyptians saw blood as the cyclical force that sustains the universe, the pulse of the cosmos reflected in the pulse of the human body. In Mesopotamia, the myth of creation describes humanity formed from the blood of a divine being, not as punishment, but as transmission. The message is clear. The human being carries within itself a spark of the divine. This idea echoes through Hermetic philosophy, which proclaims that what is above is like what is below, and what is within is like what is without. The Greeks and Romans saw blood as the symbol of honor, destiny, and lineage. It was the mark of belonging, the sign of one's place in the cosmic order. Their rituals were not acts of brutality, but symbolic performances that aligned the individual with the rhythms of nature and the will of the gods. Among the Celts and the Norse, blood was the bridge between worlds. It represented the liminal moment where the human touched the other world, where the boundaries between the visible and the invisible dissolved. In all these cultures, blood was a metaphor for transition, transformation, and truth. It was the sign that the human being is not merely an observer of the cosmos, but a participant in its unfolding. Yet with the rise of the great monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, a profound shift occurred. The gods of the old world, once embodiments of natural forces and psychological archetypes, were recast as demons. Not because they were evil, but because they represented autonomy. They represented a direct relationship between the individual and the sacred, without intermediaries. They represented diversity of paths, multiplicity of truths, and the possibility that the divine could be encountered within the self. For a centralized religious structure, this was intolerable. The old gods had to be demonized so that the new god could reign alone. Baal became Baal, Astarte became Astaroth, Pan became the devil, Hecate became a witch, Dionysus became possession, Lilith became a monster. The demonology of the Middle Ages is, in truth, the mythology of the ancient world rewritten through the lens of fear and control. The symbolic use of blood was suppressed not because it was dangerous, but because it represented personal power. It represented the idea that the sacred could be found within the individual, that the human being could access the divine without permission. Critics often argue that ancient rituals were primitive or violent, But this is a projection. The vast majority of ancient rites were symbolic, psychological, and cosmological. They were dramas of meaning, not acts of harm. Others claim that blood is inherently dangerous and should be avoided, but this misunderstands the symbol. The blood we speak of is not literal. It is the metaphor of authenticity, the inner truth that one offers to the process of transformation. It is the willingness to confront the self without masks. It is the courage to descend into the unconscious and emerge renewed. Some argue that direct connection to the divine is heresy, but the Hermetic, Neoplatonic, and Gnostic traditions all affirm that the human being contains a spark of divinity. Even Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart taught that the soul has a point where God is born within it. The idea that the human is a microcosm of the macrocosm is universal. The Emerald Tablet declares that what is above is like what is below, and what is within is like what is without. The human being contains its spark. In this sense, the ancient gods, now called demons, are not external beings but archetypes within the psyche. Hermes is the intellect. Aphrodite is desire. Ares is courage. Hecate is the threshold. Dionysus is dissolution. Baal is the power of symbolic invisibility. Lilith is the shadow. Sophia is wisdom. Abraxas is the synthesis of opposites. These figures are not monsters or masters. They are functions of consciousness, forces of the inner world, patrons of specific domains of human experience. To work with them symbolically is to work with aspects of oneself. The blood, in this symbolic framework, becomes the sign of inner offering, the willingness to give one's truth to the process of individuation. It is not a physical act, but a psychological one. The sacrifice of illusion, the shedding of false identity, the revelation of the authentic self. Ascension is not escape from the world, but descent into the depths of the psyche. It is the integration of shadow, the reconciliation of opposites, the transformation of chaos into order. In the modern world, the symbols once suppressed are returning. Jung resurrected the archetypes. Campbell resurrected the mythic journey. Eliade resurrected the sacred dimension of human experience. Contemporary spirituality rediscovers the inner world as the true temple. The symbol of blood returns, not as an act but as a metaphor for truth, intensity, and transformation. Blood is memory. Blood is identity. Blood is the red thread that binds the human to the divine. It is the reminder that the cosmos is not separate from us, but reflected within us. As long as there are those who understand blood as symbol, no dogma can extinguish the divine spark within the human being. For what is above is like what is below, and what is within is like what is without. And each of us, in our depths, carries the echo of the gods.